Good evening, everybody. After a critical blunder, we are live with Top Deck Heroes. We have our regular host tonight, myself, Sean O'Brien, the resident fan who's mad that we didn't get a certain defensive tackle to our team. We have Kevin Broberg, who is in a psychedelic tie-dye world tonight, it looks like. Jesse Cervini, who is on fire!
It's fine.
And of course... And of course, we have Tim Keefe.
Okay. I just have a normal background because I wasn't thoughtful enough to create one before starting this.
Implying I created this one, but yeah.
Welcome.
I find whatever.
Welcome to the show, everybody. So tonight we are doing actually my favorite format of show to do, and that is a question and answer show. Turns out I actually like this format even more than the year in review, which is my second favorite format. But I can't review Jasco games every week. That would be bad.
Microcosms of issues.
I can't give out that many grades a year. It's like when your teacher sends home a progress report every week and like your parents get mad about something on it, right? But before we get to the question and answer session, let's do our weekly survey. So this week we looked at not a super classic card, kind of what we called back in the day a new FS card. We looked at Deathcopter Attack. This card was from the Quest of Souls set, which was the second Soul Calibur 4 set. It was the last set before Jasco took over. So this is a 4/3, 3 high for 5 with a +1 mid block. It has Death, Order, and Void, classic Yoshimitsu symbols. It has weapon, combo, ranged. Combo E, discard a card. Your opponent reveals their hand. Choose a card and discard it. I'm sorry, choose... Yeah, I can't read it, it's too small. But at any rate, they discard the card of your choice. And so, that's the card. And so we asked everybody, what they thought of Deathcopter Attack. But before we get to the scores, let's see what our hosts had to say about it.
Yeah, Deathcopter. I like this card. So this card has a nice square stat line, right? Like it's got a good block modifier, more damage than difficulty, like middling speed, but it's off mid, and then it's got that really cool, really exciting combo ability. Getting to peek your opponent's hand in and of itself is very powerful, and then stripping away one of their hand traps or just opening up a block zone that they won't have can be incredibly potent.
I feel like this card would have been a lot more powerful back during the Mega Man block when there are lots of good ranged attacks to stick this after. I think ranged is a bit lacking right now. Like if this was combo weapon, I feel like this card would see a lot of play right now. I think it's got very reasonable stats at 4 difficulty, does 5 damage, and targeted hand discard is super good. You can't like walk into a Pure of Heart here.
Unless your opponent has a hand of like 4 Pure of Hearts, in which case you got
like exactly 1 card in its Pure of Heart.
Did I tell my favorite Widowmaker story a few weeks ago? But that's for another time. I'll tell that at the end of the show, I guess.
Jesse, or Tim, what do you guys think?
I'll go. I think that card is perfectly fine and should happily be rolled into standard. One thing I think was the part of conversation when people were saying, like, how do you play this card? Why do you play... The best one was, how do you play this card with Shotgun? Because Shotgun's an attack you want to play at the end of a chain. But you need Shotgun to combo this card. And my response to that was just play a shotgun first, and then play it. Like, where's your advantage? You could, or you got to play more range attacks. That's all I gotta say. There's plenty of them out there.
All right,
you gotta find the right ones.
Why don't you just play as Yusuke, and you can lead off with a Spirit Gun?
That's true too.
Or Spirit Gun has to be one of the best cards to follow this up with because you can pick the zone, and so it can be an 8 damage attack that's off wherever they have a block.
Yeah. I'll pull pull up a foundation, and then I will spit the card out of your hand. Good luck.
Yeah, I feel like this card would be very, very good in Yusuke. You know,
it fits nicely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Although the one thing that Yusuke doesn't really have necessarily, I mean, he has Spirit Shotgun, right? But if you draw a lot of Spirit Shotguns, you feel pretty good most of the time as Yusuke. I don't know if he has a lot of kind of depth in his lineup that really, like, you know, once you've opened the door, he can always close. Like, once he gets in, he can always close the game out. I feel like he can, you know, especially with the if he's running a lot of spirit attacks just for the sake of having fodder for his ability, those aren't necessarily the greatest closers these days.
Yeah, I mean, I wound up running, you know, ridding the world of outsiders and stakeout, and it was a struggle. You know, getting Death Yusuke to be able to threaten with things that aren't shotgun is uphill.
yeah, but I feel like off of Death, you could even, I mean, you could, being able to use all the Death tools to control your opponent's stage might get you to the mid to late game where you can really do the most damage with a Spirit Shotgun string.
And actually, yeah. So from a, you know, competitive point of view, like I'm hesitant if I would necessarily endorse this card as like a top tier card, but from a format design perspective, you know, back when we had before that Kevin Broberg 2 deck got banned, right? It's packed full of hand traps, Revoke, Toguro Brothers, Princess Perry, Flame Aura, and the threat of this card could be a great resource to exist in the format to punish that kind of thing. So if you know, you're playing the Kevin deck and you play into a Deathcopter attack deck, that could really just pick you apart and maul you, and especially because that deck plays at a rather, like, it likes to be in desperation, so a 5 damage attack is half of its effective life total at that point. So that could really sort of be a, I'm trying to think of a clever analogy of like a predator or a silver bullet. That's what I'm looking for, to take out a deck that's leaning too deep into hand traps, while also, you know, imposing a cost on deck building. You can't just throw it in any deck. You have to have that range attack support to line it up with. But then you can kind of get a natural push and pull in the metagame. Is, you know, if there aren't a lot of hand traps floating around, then your Deathcopter attack deck is a little bit inefficient, and so it's going to struggle in the metagame more widely.
Yeah. And I think, sort of like my broad view of the meta based on the whole, like, 2 events that we've had, is that you can build, for the most part, like, there exists a pretty decent range of decks that have strong enough defense, whether you want to call them control decks or not, have strong enough defense in them to survive the scariest aggro decks and to beat them. And sort of the open question is, you know, what is the range of ways that, you know, what is the range of decks that can beat those really strong defenses? And I think a card like Deathcopter would be a good contribution to sort of creating more lines by which people could get through, you know, a late game Cassandra board or a late game Raptor board or something like that.
So let's go back down memory lane here before we get on to our main topic. The Meta asks in the chat, you know, what decks saw this play back in the day. And I know from my memory, you actually have to go back to pre-Jasco times when this card was actually very prolific, right? There was
this card was like a cornerstone of the Mr. Karate deck. I'm just gonna state that for a fact.
One player played it in Mr. Karate.
Yep. Come on, Don Chambers top 4 worlds with Mr. Karate with this card.
2 players played Mr. Karate.
Just saying, it's a card. It doesn't. It was back in the. Yes, I will agree. Pre-Jasco, this card had some play, and then somehow it just, as the format evolved within the Jasco era, it definitely fell to the side. I'll agree.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if we go back to that kind of new FS era between when just Shadow War through Quest of Souls was legal, like, not only with this ability, it's just a well-statted card for that era. You know, back then, typically attacks... Yeah, because blocking was bad. Like, you could not block unless you were blocking with your attacks. And coming up with a ranged move wasn't that hard. Plus, it was just a 3 high for 5 on 4 diff, which was just solid at that time.
I think one of the big role players that got to accompany this card back in the day, hey, maybe we could make this a pull card in the future, was Unstoppable Warrior, though, which my one of my champ cards is modeled after I guess a similar asset. Basically said if your attack has 5 permanent damage, you can sacrifice Foundation and lock yourself into only attacking this turn. You can't play in Foundations once you're done, but you get into that Berserker Rage. You can add 4 damage to every attack if you're willing to sacrifice Foundations, and that pairs really, really well with Dive Powder attack. You open the door, you play any 2 more attacks, and as long as they have printed 5s, that's 18 damage. It's 27 damage across 3 hits. Plus stripping a block that's going to close out a lot of games.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I'm looking at Ultra. They're actually finding a range attack back then actually wasn't the easiest thing in the world. You have to play Yoshimitsu's other attack, Bad Stomach, to go deeper on the hand shred. You could play Howling Spirits off of Void. Astro decks didn't generally run Raven's Claw. And there's a lot of other stuff that just didn't see play. So that might be part of it. It's just like the range attack selection at the time was until Red Horizon had a bunch of
Red Horizon. You got Hair Trigger,
Mugshot,
Blazing
Storm,
and the freaking the one damage attack. Also,
Fire in the Hole.
Fire in the Hole. Hey, that was always a 2 bit for 5.
All right, let's look and see what the community felt about Deathcopter Attack. So, 30 votes for good for standard, 17 votes saying was too good for standard, and 2 votes saying not good enough for standard. I was initially surprised by how many people said it was too good.
Yeah, I think that I disagree with that take. I mean, I can imagine that. Well, maybe some of them have a good argument, or or a philosophical reason of we shouldn't be looking at people's hands. That's something we shouldn't be doing. To which I'd respond, well, Queen of Hearts. I think this card is kind of worse than Queen of Hearts actually. In the grand scheme of things, it's a little bit better on turn 2 because it's easier to combo it, and you're only paying 4 diff plus progress instead of 7. But that combo restriction, the extra card cost, and not getting anything else. I mean, I think it's a rough time, and this would be a role player. I don't think this is too good.
Yeah, there might be like a snap reaction to offensive cards on the part of some people, right? Like they think like aggro is way too good right now. Just anything that looks shaped like aggro is really scary.
Yeah.
But it's. I don't think this helps turn 2 decks that much unless you're exactly Yusuke firing off a shotgun, right? Like there aren't too many decks that like after their second attack, that's when their good stuff's gonna come.
Right, and this isn't like a downward spiral that's gonna strip a card from your opponent's hand and then get plus 8 damage. Like this is a 5 damage move.
Man, I'd love to play this with downward spiral. They're like, oh, I'm gonna pitch a card, you pitch a card. Now we're both down a card.
And on that note, Jesse, we're going to stop talking about this card because you're giving us all, dramatic flashbacks. And we're going to move on to our main topic. So we've finished up the weekly survey. And this week, like I said, my favorite type of show of all is a question and answer show. And so this week we asked Universe's players for their questions. And we're going to try to answer as many as we can tonight. We had a very good response. We're not going to get to all of them. We do have enough that if we need to fill in some time next week, we'll be able to, which I think is kind of great. So let's switch over to our first question. We're gonna start off with a softball question here for you guys, okay? Our first question of the night is, do you feel optimistic with the changes moving forward in an attempt to expand the game? So I feel like, and I'm going to throw my little spin on all these questions to kind of get the conversation going in a direction. I think recently they announced the new inclusion of the quirk packs, plus ultra packs. DLC was a big change from the way we've done things in the past. And do we feel optimistic that these things are going to help grow universes? Open discussion.
Universes or the My Hero Academia collectible card game?
Porque no los dos?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably tied to some degree or another, but, they are, like, sort of separate conversations, because I know a lot of people think that having separate rules for MHA only would cause problems with getting people into universes or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think having smaller formats is beneficial for new player acquisition. You know, I think there is a barrier to entry when you have to go back and buy cards from Mortal Kombat and Cowboy Bebop. I mean, my immediate thought with this was I mean, maybe this wasn't what they were thinking of, but my immediate thought was like, you know, they're tweaking the sideboard rules. They're tweaking, you know, they're I guess it's not exactly first party support for player 2 buffs, but they're open to experimentation. The retro format had a very active rotating ban list. Well, not rotating ban list, really, but a very actively maintained ban list. And I think that though they were making frequent changes throughout this through this last year, and I think that that's a good sign, and that they're willing to make those things and to improve the experience for it. That's promising.
Yeah, I think that Jasco, not only before, you know, pandemic stuff happened, they were doing lots of other things, I think, to improve the universe's experience as well. You know, making, you know, at high level tournament play, making those final rounds matter more by giving, you know, the first player advantage in elimination depending on your placement, you know, and things like that. And I think the other thing is, with these changes coming along, I think it's got more people interested in the game, which is going to also cause some more content to be created. And I think that's where a lot of third-party support is going to help make universes expand and be better as well. Jesse, any thoughts? If not, we can go on to the next question. Doesn't?
Oh no. So, how do I feel optimistic? I mean, I'm always gonna say this. I'm optimistic until I can physically hold it. That's about it, guys. I can't, like you can say it's coming. You can keep saying it's coming till the cows come home. But once I have something that I can physically read, I can actually load up to a website, read the format, have a full description, and have a physical product. My optimism is about as far as I can throw it. So, depending on who it is, not far.
I mean, I would say that my optimism is certainly tied to some of this stuff, and I'd include the first player thing in that. That's kind of an iceberg that's floating out there that, you know, people don't need us to tell them, right? They are coming on, you even right now with just like a trickle of people coming in or posting on Facebook a bunch of questions that include things like, hey, isn't there like a bad first player advantage in this game? Nobody prompted that, right? Yeah. They're just offering that. And, you know, the existing players will white knight when there's a way to do that, right? When there's an actual way to spin it, but there's not really a way to spin this. They'd just be lying, right? If they said there wasn't any sort of a problem. So, you know, if there continues to be a refusal to address that, then, you know, I'm certainly worried that this is gonna, you know, a lot of people are gonna buy in the first set and then not be very interested in playing the game competitively, right? And then, you know, some of the stuff Jesse alluded to, you know, we've never seen what a marketing push looks like from Jasco, right? We don't know if people are going to know that this thing exists. We assume that Funimation's going to help out, but we don't, you know, we have to see it. We've never seen it, maybe for some brief period. I don't think the website's ever been like particularly informative, right? Or like, here's how the format's going to work. Here's everything you need to know. Everything's easy to navigate, easy to find what you're looking for. I don't know if that's ever been the case at any point, and the person who would primarily be working on the website is still on furlough. So, you know, I'm optimistic that there's the potential, right? I'm very optimistic about the potential if, you know, Jasco handles it correctly, but we don't know if that's going to happen yet.
Yeah, I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic. I mean, I've been selling universes for almost 10 years now, and I really think we are on the cusp of our ship coming in, and hopefully, even though that iceberg's out there, we're going to be too big to fail. You know, we're just going to be unsinkable. Because
no, don't just remember, And just that an iceberg needs to hit so many points on that ship, and it's going down either way.
And on that note, speaking of getting so big we're unbeatable, next question. Does Universes have a real shot at breaking into the top 10 selling... Oh, this thing ran off here. Collectible card games if an IP like My Hero Academia holds up?
It already is.
Yeah,
I'm not joking.
Yeah, top 10's a bit too broad.
Top 10 is too easy. Top
Yeah.
5, that's where the big flux happens. This is a... And everybody... here's the old reference. I'll go to... I'm gonna take this one. It's just actually... have feeling about it. Everybody used to use Inquest as the note of, all right, what's the top selling games? And it's always just the top 3 was always Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh. UFS for a long time, because of how it was being distributed, first by Sabretooth, second by Fantasy Flight, never was referenced in any of their numbers. But actual marketing numbers, there's a podcast at one point in time, they all thought UFS was like the constant number 4. It never could break higher than 3, but it was always above everything below it. Like the WoW TCG was the only thing giving its a run for its money, and even that, like, to try to get ahead of it for a long time. Even in the Jasco era, like, it definitely is a top 10 game. I mean, you understand that once you get outside of the big 3 or 4 games, or card games in the US, they are literally pockets of, 10,000 people, less or even less, pocketed all over the country, all over the world, playing a game, or even less than that. But they exist. Yeah, we outlive everything. That's the one thing I remember. We outlive everything. Everything's like, oh, this is it. I'm leaving UFS for this game. You always come back.
We're like a cockroach. When you think you've got us dead, there's always more.
I mean, we died twice.
Yeah, I mean, because you like. I remember we were looking at this for like a different conversation. If you just try to count the active collectible card games right now, I don't think there are even 10 really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The big 3, you have us, you have
Digimon,
DB Super, Final Fantasy, that's 7.
Flesh and Blood.
Flesh and Blood is 8.
People still play Vanguard technically.
Vanguard and
Vice Schwartz, Vice Schwartz would be 9, and Vanguard's. It's hard to get. You can get to 10 with Vanguard.
It's hard to get to 10. Like,
yeah,
they're 8. Like, it's because then you start getting the blur of where do digitals fall on those numbers too.
Yeah, we're not going to count those.
I know. I'm just saying. It's another market completely.
So my feeling about this is, I think we're in the top 10. I think we're towards the bottom right now because we're not releasing any product, and everybody else is. And I think that's our big holdup. I truly believe, top 10's not good enough for me. After the My Hero release, I think we could be 5, 4, maybe 3. I think with the power of our license, the power of our game system, I think it's completely reasonable to overtake Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon. Genuinely believe it.
Pokemon will not. Pokemon's on the high horse right now.
You're right. Okay, we could. I think we could overtake. We could take magical cards. We could overtake magical cards. We could overtake Yu-Gi-Oh.
I think that. Hey, you know what? Magic. People are getting pissed at Magic. They're literally doing a cash grab attempt, and it's going really bad. I will talk to you guys after. I've been following the Magic spoilers for this jank thing that they're releasing as a booster set, and it's literally gonna launch at a lower price point per pack than it's worth. Like, it's awful.
But yeah, top 10, I think we're okay, but I think we can get to top 3, and without being sarcastic, without being borderline toxic, I think we can genuinely get to 3 or 2, as long as we have My Hero come out and we start having consistent releases. I think we could find ourselves pretty close or on top. I don't think beating Pokemon's out of our reach. Genuinely don't.
We could knock it off for about a year, 6 months.
I mean, we'll be competitive, right? We'll be like New England and Tampa Bay. Like, there's gonna be like certain people always vying for the championship, but we'll be a contender every year as long as we can get our ducks in the same pond. Kevin, Do you have any final thoughts on this question?
I think y'all covered it all. Yeah, I think I was probably thinking, oh yeah, I'll let Jesse tackle this one a little better. He's much more knowledgeable about Jesse and Sean tackle this. They're much more knowledgeable about the industry status and everything.
Alrighty.
So how about this next one? Yeah.
All right, so I threw in an extra question here. This wasn't in our original lineup. What do you think the future of content creation looks like for universes, and what impact will that have on the game?
Yeah, so I really like this trend of streaming we're seeing these days. Some just people streaming their matches played on Tabletop Simulator. The couple podcasts we've got floating around. I think that's certainly going to continue, and I hope that gets a little bit more systematized. Maybe that we get a little bit more production value on some of the matches and stuff. I don't know what that would look like really, but I think that's a really important inroad to have into the game. And I think that's very valuable to the future of the game. To have, I know, like for me personally, I engage with Magic very little in actual playing cards, but I watch a whole bunch of content on YouTube and on other channels or whatever, because it's entertaining and because there are cool people who are fun to watch as they play these games on these digital platforms. And if we could have something like that for UVS, I mean, obviously Magic Arena and Magic Online are much better platforms for entertainment value than Tabletop Simulator, but like, that could be that's still there's still a lot of opportunity there.
I think the future of content creation in universes is almost like the future of single sales and places to buy product. It's about to get big, right? I think that we have maybe 2,000 active players right now, and we already have a ton of content coming out every week, right? We've got unfun stuff. Every now and then, Painus releases a video. There's us. There's
Metamaniacs. Yeah, there's
guys up in Canada. There's this guys in Scotland, right? And that's with a 2,000 player game. I imagine once My Hero comes out, that there's going to be, let's say we have 100,000 players, which is I believe is a reasonable number. Then there's going to be a couple dozen or even 100 content creators, and I think that the content is actually going to improve significantly. Turns out the four of us working out of our basements, we may become irrelevant. There may be just better content out there, and I think that's going to be overall good for the health and growth of universes.
I would love nothing better than to be a small fish swallowed up by a whale of content creation in this community.
Yeah, I mean, right, like in theory, right, if things go well, then there will be some people that have existing followings, right, existing communities of, way more than, the couple dozen that we get watching on a good night, that move into making content for the My Hero Academia card game. And they're just going to start bigger than any current content creator has ever been, right? Yeah. And then grow from there. So, yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised by that. Like, there is a lot. I have just started like iceberging my way into like different like YouTubers and stuff like that, and there are ones that just like huge anime fans, and they do like one episode when they one video a month about their thing, and they'll talk about like, oh, and start playing this game. As soon as they start to, if you get one of them to do that, it could go off the rails. Thing can go off the rails. Like, it's like, man, like, oh, there's a thing I'll tell you guys another thing after this show. It's just because I was trying to find out how the hell the Pokemon thing started. That's been going off the rails during the pandemic, and then I found the point of like the entry point of it, and I'm like, man, the story, how it's gonna be a great documentary at some point. How this pandemic destroyed secondary markets. It's gonna be great.
And on that note, talking about our planned obsolescence, let's move on to another question. Alrighty, our next question. This one's a little more complicated. With the introduction of DLC, plus Ultra Packs and Quirk Packs, do you think these supplemental products will detract from main set releases, especially since they contain non-set cards?
So I'm just going to get the toxic. I'm just getting the toxic point out of the way here first. Well, clearly, something detracted from main set releases. It's been a hot minute.
Dang.
So, I think, yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, though. Like clearly, last year we had a lot of competitively important cards come out in those DLC, and there's a lot of hand wringing about what's going to happen in the quirk packs and how important those cards are going to be. I can't imagine that there will be, like that main sets will become irrelevant or anything like that. Maybe they'll become relatively less critical, but like there haven't been a lot of sets that are just total duds that have no cards you need to have or that are worth that are useless in a broader context either. And I can't imagine like Jess Games really hates publishing cards that no one wants to use. Right, like they want every card to be playable. So I think that we're still going to see main set to be full of cards that are important.
Yeah, I think there's zero chance that this is a problem. We've seen that we've already had this, right? We had the King of Fighters packs. It wasn't. It didn't change anything about people wanting to collect the sets as they came out and things like that. We had the, we had. I don't know if we had DLC alongside a set release at any point, but
we did not.
Yeah, I mean maybe
starter decks, right?
Yeah, right. Like people
no
buy
one
starter decks. People
batted
bought
an eye when here's an extra, potentially like an $80 purchase to buy a starter case to get a place out of your Ever Hopefuls or whatever. It's really the same sort of thing.
Yeah, it's nothing shaped like this has ever been an issue, and there's no reason why this would be any different. Quirk packs are just more ultra rares. The plus ultra packs are just King of Fighters packs. DLCs are just like if they printed starter decks as often as we'd like them to. So
some of you, turns out for people like me, starter decks are the worst.
Yeah, I mean, people who are looking to grow playgroups or whatever, right? They really wish there was a starter deck for every license or whatever. But yeah,
Jesse, any thoughts on this?
Okay, so I'm still on the.
Ooh, thank you to King Goomba for the subscription through Prime.
Hey,
I'll learn someday what those actually do. But back to your question, Jesse.
All right, so here's the thing: is supplemental products. This person's using 3 different things here. One is a purchasable product, one is a tournament prize product, and one is a purchase by number product. Like. They're all 3 different things. One's a tournament prize. Okay, cool. Your tournament prizes are actually going to be these packs. We've done it before. We'll do it again. The core packs are just a box incentive system. Great. It's perfectly fine as long as they don't do something stupid about it. I'm perfectly agreeable with it. Now, DLC. If they could get the DLC where it's you get 2 of everything. That's 2 characters, 2. The whole spread across the board is 2 of everything. I don't mind spending what is it, like $50 every. If it was every other, like it's every other month, I'll spend $50 every other month and get a place up, throw in the binder. If there's something really really good, maybe I'll buy 4. I don't know. It's an extra box. It's like a little over a box. It's not bad.
One other angle on this is the DLC is going to, if MHA is as big as we want it to be, Jesco is not going to want to print sets that aren't MHA, right? Just business-wise, right? And the DLC is going to allow them to continue to support their other licenses and support Standard in some way. And the fact that those exist it's not going to pose a threat to the MHA sales, right? It might be harder. That the DLC sales might not be where Jasco hopes that they're going to be. The threat, of course, is that people just stop playing Standard after a certain point if there's no like full Standard sets for a while. But right, once the MHA format's like 3 or 4 sets big, like the incentive to play Standard is going to be fairly low, and Jasco is going to have to square that at some point.
Dude, Nightmare is a cooler character than every single person in My Hero Academia, so I'm going to keep playing Standard.
I mean, so my thought on this, and I kind of want to unpack each individual thing here. So the DLC, the way I see it, regarding the new My Hero folks coming in, if they use the DLC to promote their other licenses, That's like, getting like a sample, right? You're getting a sample of what full standard is. You're getting a sample of, let's say they do, in my fantasy world, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles DLC. You're getting a sample of what that could be. You're getting a sample of Army of Darkness. You're getting a sample of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And they could probably actually use those sales to determine if these smaller licenses are worth printing a full size set on. And if they can get it to the point, let's say we got on a 4 set per year release system, like everybody else, right? So every 3 months you're going to get a booster set, and let's say in between each booster set you get a DLC. That's a completely reasonable thing to keep up with. The quirk packs, everyone thinks the sky is falling on them. I don't. They're more box toppers. They're more box toppers that might actually be worth collecting, right? And then lastly, the Plus Ultra packs. Anything that encourages you to go to your friendly local game store or play in online events, because I'm sure, online events are going to continue to happen. I think a lot of stores have had great success with them. If all you got to do to get these cards, and we don't know what they are yet. They could be, reprints. They could be alternate arts. They could be, characters, 2-dot characters. We don't know what they are yet. But if all you got to do is play universes to get these, the sky's not falling. You're going to be just fine. If I have to, go to my local store and play universes every week, don't threaten me with a good time, right?
Yeah.
I'll threaten you with a good time all the time.
Yeah, it's called Kung Jin. So I don't think it's going to detract from main set releases. I think that these are actually just going to enhance the product, because the more things you have in your hand to play with makes the format more dynamic, means it's more fun. All right, on to a question that's probably better for you guys, since you guys are actually good at this game.
A rare strategy question. I love it.
How do you know when a deck is good enough to play at a local versus a PTC versus at a major event?
Can I go first on this one?
Yeah.
All yours.
All right. A local, I'm willing to throw anything against the wall. That is what a local is for. A local is for, I'm gonna play this deck that I have no idea if it's good, and I'm just gonna throw it against the wall, and we're gonna see if it's good or bad tonight. See what people show up with. I am aware of this, of probably where I don't go to a PTC anymore with the I built this deck last night. I'm gonna play it.
Classic Kevin Broberg.
Or
Could it be me?
I definitely have done my A deck goes to somebody else to play, and I'll play the B deck that I've been playing at locals for a good time. Like that's how Kunjin showed up. It was like, hey, it's this fun deck. I don't want to play my Cicada deck I've been working on for months. I'm just gonna play Kunjin again. Oh, let's do this. It's all depends, really. But yeah, I locals are the best of pros laying against the wall. Like you have something new and fun you want to try, play it there, have fun. Maybe you got something, you just like need somebody else to look at it. That's usually how it be, how it happens.
Yeah, for me, I think I have a clear answer to this, which might not actually be useful to anyone, which is that I know a deck is good enough to play if it's not a worse version of something else. That's my line. If I build a deck that's like, yeah, here's some generic fire character, and then Jesse sits down across me with Kung Jin, it's like, oh wow, yeah, his deck is just better than mine. That deck is no longer good enough to play, but maybe there's something there that I can refine or polish or like focus on to make that deck into not a bad version of Kung Jin. And ideally, you can make your deck not a bad version, a whole new archetype that's never been invented before, and then you've polished it, and it doesn't have the same weaknesses as anything else. It's got its own strengths, and that's the perfect opportunity. But that's when it's good enough to play. And when it comes to when is a PTC, when is a major, when is any of that stuff happening, it's just, well, where's my deck at that point? And I want to put as much effort and love and energy into the deck that I can, but it's just where it is at that point, and that's what I'll play.
Go ahead, Tim Keith.
Yeah, I'm sort of same. The locals is just like does the deck like fundamentally function, right? If you're doing something really weird, you know, if you're playing like a 30 attack deck, have you at least like goldfish some games or something just to like make sure it functions on a basic level or whatever. But aside from that, locals are try stuff, right? And some weeks you could just try something that you think is funny. Some weeks you could try something that you think has potential or whatever. For a PTC, when I didn't have locals, right, and this will be different now, but up until this point, when I haven't had locals living out in Connecticut, save for some trips to Cape Cod, you know, once every 2 months or something, I would use PTCs to try to refine decks for majors, right? I would play Yusuke deck at PTC after PTC after PTC. I did the same thing. I played Spike 2 at multiple PTCs and things like that. But in general, for a PTC, I want to run a deck that isn't like, the point of running the deck isn't necessarily to give myself the best chance of winning that PTC. It's like to put a deck through a really good test, like a deck that I think has enough of a chance to be good that I want to spend this chance, right? The opportunity cost is if you run this deck at a PTC, you cannot run another deck at the PTC, right? So I'm willing to use that currency to find out about this deck, right? Is this as good as I hope it can be? Can I learn something about it to make it a little bit better? You know, can I just decide to give up on it or whatever? That's sort of my line for PTCs, right? Like the Lilith I brought to the Atlanta PTC was something that I had played in a couple Cape Cod events and worked on a little bit, but I didn't play that Lilith at that event thinking this is how I'm going to win this PTC. It was just like, well, let's get it a real test, right? And then for a major, it should just be whatever the best deck you have at the time is. Not best deck on paper, but the best deck in terms of what you've worked on the most, played the most, what you feel the best about playing, like that sort of thing. Just whatever it is. And if you're going to make any sort of special changes to your deck just for a major, then I would say try to tune it for, usually, you know, in most formats, longer games, or whatever constitutes sort of, what are some of the like more maximally scumbag things people might try to do at like untimed rounds in a major, or, you know, if people are going to bring the stuff that they think is broken or whatever, you want to be kind of more prepared for that than, you know, people don't really hide things by like not bringing PTCs or anything like that, but, you know, you're not going to see those decks as much at locals or at PTCs, and then, you know, you will at Worlds if you want to be at the top tables, right? If there exists a 50, you know, a 4 to 8 attack Cassandra deck in the format, like someone might play that at the PTC and you might see it if you're at that PTC where somebody played it. But if you're at Worlds and there's 4 people that have been working on this deck that think this is pretty good that are running it, then you're going to see it, right?
So I feel like my advice on this question actually applies both to beginners and to late stage UFS players like myself, who, you know, are semi-retired. I like to use locals to try new things, not necessarily new decks, but decks that are kind of outside my comfort zone. You know, I cannot stress enough that you should never go to a PTC or a major playing a powerful deck just because it's powerful. If you don't have experience with it, if it's not something you're comfortable with, you know, I've fallen into this trap a couple of times and I had a horrible time. I would, you know, at my locals, if I'm going to play an aggro deck, I mean, everybody knows I suck at aggro. I hate playing aggro. It's unfun. It doesn't feel enjoyable. But if I want to get better at it, I'm going to learn to do that at a local. I'm not going to say, okay, you know, I've been playing this Control Jetta deck for the last 8 months, but I'm going to a PTC. I better learn how to play Kung Jin quick. Like, you're not going to have a good time. So, you know, especially if you're new or if you're just lazy like me, look at deck lists and try something new at a local. And then if you know, cycle through different things, because your locals every week and you find something you like, then you start tuning it to yourself, and then you can take it to a PTC or a major. I mean, I have every single champ card I've won, and I won 2. I've been running what people would consider like mediocre decks, but I played well because it was a deck I was confident with. and you're better off playing a mediocre deck that you're comfortable with than playing a broken deck that you don't know.
Yeah, and I think confidence is actually a really good word. Is that if you're not confident in your deck, you're not going to perform well. It's just not going to happen. If you're not certain about your deck, but like you believe in it, then that's where you want to be. Like you want to understand what you're doing, you want to understand where you're going, and like if you're ever lost in a game, that's a sign that you made a mistake in testing.
Yeah, and if the thing about like personal playstyle and stuff is not as much of a I think people hear that especially if they're newer to the game, they play other card games, they think like that's kind of like a whatever statement. It's like a throwaway, like yeah, just like a cute have fun statement. But in this game, it's an actual thing in the sense that Universes has a lot of risk reward in it, right?
Yeah.
There's multiple different layers and forms of risk reward decisions and risk reward non-decisions that go into the game.
Operating under uncertainty too, right? Like reads and what blocks does he have? What is he thinking?
Different. There's no like there's too much going on to just like this is the mathematically optimal way to play, right? in in a broad range of situations, right? Like obviously there are some you can come up with specific cases where you can math it out, but
I think there are more than people give a think, but also yes, you're completely correct.
Right. Like when you're trying to like figure out what block zones they might have in their hand, like that's how you can't just like raw math that out all the time, right? You can know what's in their deck, but in any case, my point is like different people are gonna, as they play and hopefully play different kinds of decks, but just as they accumulate experience, they're gonna develop different habits and tendencies, and how they personally are going to approach different situations, right? Like there are some people that if they're in a situation where they're 95% to win right now, but they think they can get to 99 if they wait, some people will wait in those cases, and some people will just say screw it, I've got 95 right now, let's go, right? And for some people that line is if I'm 70 to win, I'm just gonna go, right? And that's sort of just a big picture thing, and that's not to talk about like how do you feel about making risky control checks, how do you feel about bluffing better blocks than you actually have, and this whole list of things. And so if you just net deck somebody else's pet deck that they have consciously or subconsciously tuned that to the way that they're going to play and the way that they're going to play that deck, and if you're not going to be approaching things the same way, then that's not going to be the exact right build.
It's not going to maximize your expected value.
All right, it's time for an economics question. This is a twofer. Alrighty, so as a single seller in the market, how do you feel players can best determine which cards hold on to for better worth? And kind of in a parallel to this, what qualities do you look for in cards early to feel like they're going to be popular and in demand that becomes more useful as more sets come out? I'm going to take point on this one because turns out every time a new set comes out, Kevin, Jesse, and I, and Tim now, since he lives in Rochester, we're going to sit around my dining room table and say, okay, what's the $40 card in this set? And when we look at that, we look for abilities that I think are just good in an evergreen sense, right? Take a card like Nutcracker. Like, everything about that card is always good. A 4 difficulty move. It gets +4 damage most of the time, or it used to. It almost always draws you a card. Like, all those things are good. And it has EX3, which is speed to help you get up and over. So that's a card that you could say, okay, this card is always going to be good. And those are the types of cards you want to look at, especially at the ultra rare rarity. If you can find a card like that, that's a card you're going to want to collect and hold on to. Because a card that's always good is only going to be worth more in the future. Forbidden Moonset, I feel like, is another card like that. Like, that card is always good. It always does 1 million damage. It always gives you momentum. It always puts a trouble card into your opponent's hand. It's just another evergreen staple at ultra rare. And really, if you're looking for value, you want to look at that, and you want to look for evergreen cards at the rare slot. Sense of Morals. being able to make control checks and ready things is always good.
So, Universonomics friends, tell me if I am just a dumb meat-headed Spike putting his head in the sand, or if there's something to this. But I thought of Forbidden Moonset when I read this question, because that was the card that I feel like most recently I thought, when I saw it, I knew I wanted to put 4 copies in every deck I built for a long time. And so, if I had still been riding on Rock TCG's coattails, oh?
We lost you for a sec. Go ahead.
You seem to be back.
So I was saying, if I'm not just riding on Rock TCG's coattails, that had been a card that I would have begged, borrowed, and stealed to make a playset of, and never let them leave my possession again. And I feel like that's the kind of card that turns into a blue chip. And the way that I know that it would turn into a blue chip is just that I always wanted it. And so when I was playing Magic for a little while and I was managing my Magic collection, it was just, well, what are the blue chips that I know I always am going to need? And that's the stuff that I focused on collecting.
Well, I don't.
And it literally just went as far as, well, what do I want for my own collection? And if it accumulates value or not, I'm getting paid by it just by the fact that I get to play with the cards in the meantime.
Well, I don't think your criteria and my criteria are really that far apart. Because I'm looking for something that's always going to be good, and that's subjective, right? And you're looking for something that you think is always going to be good. I think I look, as a store owner, I look on a broader, more general scale of it is, what do I think people are going to think is going to be good? And I have to imagine, when it comes to just dollars and cents value, what a Spike thinks is going to be good, and it's going to be valuable.
Yeah, and so I guess kind of in those terms, the framing of how I look at it is that I say, well, what is the price of this card means what people think how many people think this is good, and my best guide for that is, what do I think is good, and that's exactly how I'm going to invest my collection decisions, is what do I want to use the most in the most decks in the most ways, and that's and I just beeline to that and say, this is where I'm going to put my chips.
And I think there's a lot of overlap between those two groups. Now, Jesse, you have been the perennial backpack trader in Universes.
Yep.
Do you look at sort of the same sorts of things when you try to maximize your backpack value?
So here's the thing: is I look at on the day. I'm no way do I try to expect value on day one. Like, do I hold on to this? Do I play the long game on a card? It's, do I not need it because I've already whaled my way to my play sets? It's out the door whenever I can get for it, because dollar to dollar, I'm gonna get my most money as quickly as on day one. And then the second wave is once you start playing in tournaments every week, everything gets round. You get the coffer refill, tournament packs, traveling, all that stuff. You get the second payoff, where the cream has risen to the top of the set, and there's those cards that have that card started up $3. Now it's $10 a year later. That's where you start seeing that. I'm also one of those people. I don't throw out a single card I open. I have.
Oh.
It's just in standard. I have 5 10,000 count boxes.
Oh, that's it? That's like little fish amounts of cards.
Sean, compared to you, it is little. But and then I'm the person who's gonna stretch everything through it. I have it organized, and I'm like, I can. If Sean says hey, I need 24 of this foundation, and I have none of them in, I'll pay you 10 cents each on them. I'll be like, all right, I'll see how many I have, and you're adding them a stack the next week. I'm all for it to do that. Stretch. I will stretch everything as far as possible.
Now, Tim Keefe, you're a different type of whale. You're not a day trader. You're not a backpack trader. You don't own a store. You're not writing coattails of a company. The number one singles dealer in Universes rather. How do you identify cards that are going to be valuable?
I'm enough of a buy box as well that I just try to get play sets of everything for myself anyway. So I don't personally think about card value that much outside of for me, I'm usually thinking about normal rares, and because there tend to be, they're more likely to be like well, there are very rarely ultra rare foundations to begin with, right? But there's more likely to be normal rares that I want 8 copies of. Your Werelights, your Dark Side of Karmas, your Servant of Aris, those sorts of things. So that's usually where my focus goes, and in terms of trying to chase stuff down early. And I think that's also a good place to look if you're just trying to generate value, because Servant of Ares was not $11 on release, right? And when pretty much all the ultra rares are, aside from a couple, are higher than they're ever going to be, and all the good normal rares are probably going to be valued lower than they're eventually going to be. Like even the obvious ones, like I'm sure Karma was like $8 out of the gate, but something like Guardian the Spirit Sword was probably like $4.
Guardian Spirit Sword was $2 out of the gate for a long time too.
Yeah, so I would look for rare foundations at normal rare that have a chance to be staples.
Yep.
And because if they don't become staples, then you maybe you traded $3 or $4 of value for them. But if they do become staples, then in a year or two, when people just aren't opening that set anymore, they're going to climb up to $6, $8, $10, $12.
Yeah, and actually one cool thing is if you have a playset of like a Guardian of the Spirit Sword that's flying around, and that card becomes very scarce because it's such a staple, that's a good opportunity to trade up into an established blue chip card like a Nutcracker or a Forbidden Moonset or a Fatality or whatever, and just make that kind of blockbuster trade where you put a bunch of medium value cards on the table in exchange for the big top tier super exciting thing.
All right, so we're actually starting to run a little short on time. We've had a really good time answering questions. We've got 2 left I want to cover for the night, and we'll actually come back next week to answer some more of these questions. And thank you, everybody, for submitted them. Right, so
this actually... if you have more, fire them off too.
Absolutely.
Add more to the show next week.
Let's take an easy one here. I think we're going to come to a consensus pretty quick on this one, and that is, what is the tournament scene going to be like in 2021? And go ahead, Jesse.
I'm gonna be the visual optimist. There's gonna be one major tournament this year. It's gonna probably happen in late November, early December, in person. Like, that is my expectation, because right now that's every card game's objective right now. Is the last 3 months of the year are going to be like, we need to have a world, we need to do this, we need to have a nationals, we have to file something off this year in person. Every con is objectiving for those last 3 to 4 months of the year. I think December, I could say, hey, we could fire, like, if they needed, like, we need a world champion this year, we're firing one off, and it's gonna go, and then it's gonna be like show up to Vegas, we'll have a spot, and you like, we played in an open field for all we know.
I propose an alternative. Texas is open. Worlds, May 5th, the Texas Territory Throwdown.
No, thank you.
I
just saying, I'm gonna be optimistic. I'm gonna be optimistic. That's what I'd be expecting. I expect we're probably gonna be seeing more fire offs of online events, and be prepared to play in them and have fun. Maybe something can happen, but it sucks. Like, I know the old saying goes, we can't launch a set until we have the ability to play in person events. Well, you know what? Now I'm going to be an optimist here and be like, all right, drop it in September. We have our one major our one super weekend of the year, and that's it. And then we roll on the next year and hope we can get something going.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things in there that I just want to signal boost a little bit. Yeah, one of them is there's certainly going to be more online events, and that's really exciting. I'm thrilled to see that, and can't wait to, and especially if they continue to be more exploration of different formats and different rule sets and whatever. That's really thrilling. And also that the big question, I don't know, the tournament scene is a function of the product release, the release schedule. What's happening with that? And if we get a release in June versus a release in August versus the first release in November concurrent with Worlds, those all look totally different for what the tournament scene is going to look like this year.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that I'm still optimistic about the set landing in like May or like June at the latest. So, I'm sort of figuring like it's hard to guess at how quickly like the vaccine rollout's gonna go.
Yeah.
But in my imagination, like I think by the summer there will be enough people vaccinated that like stores will feel comfortable having, wear a mask locals and that sort of thing. And then from there, Jasco might feel comfortable setting up some like mid-level majors. They're going to want to have regionals for their MHA format and that sort of thing. But, we might see those in like August, September, that kind of deal. And then I think, yeah, they will try to hold a standard major late in the year. And I think we'll probably get UK Nats too around the same time frame.
Yeah, I think the tournament scene for 2021 is going to be heavily online for sure to start. I know the four of us had a discussion last week about our next event, and we're kind of on pause. We're waiting to find out when the new set's going to come out. I think a lot of people are. As far as, and I think once that mist clears up a little bit, I think you're going to see a lot of folks who've done online events, Legendary Wolf, Rochester CCG, Jacob Mansour at the Final Round Game Shop just fired off his first online event. There's a couple online events happening in Europe. I think there's some in Canada. I think those schedules are going to start to shake out a little more. As far as the in-person scene, I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic still. Stateside, we just authorized Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. However, now there's scary new mutations, and there's a lot of unknowns still. I think that stores have to follow local laws. I mean, in Texas, you can have a no mask barbecue Universus tournament right now, and it's perfectly safe because it's Texas. Everything's bigger there, including the coronavirus count. There are some places right now where you can hold tournaments as long as everybody wears a mask. You can hold tournaments if there's 20% of your normal capacity. Here in New York, they're right out still. So I think, as states open up, that's when people are going to be able to look at, okay, when are we going to have a regional? It seems really likely to me that the first regionals, if Jasco decides to move forward with them, they're going to be in the Southeast because they're a little more loosey-goosey with the mask mandates. I mean, the Northeast is probably going to be the last place where in-person events start again because we are not loosey-goosey about it. Dr. Fauci says things could be back to normal by June. And overall, I trust Dr. Fauci. He hasn't lied to me so far. And people seem to like him. He seems smart. He's got lots of experience. And I think what's going to determine when that major happens, if it's going to be in October, November, or December, is when that normal actually happens. And there's got to be a certain amount of lead time, right? You can't just call a hotel and say, hey, I want to host a 200-person tournament there next weekend in your convention center. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
I know, from organizing these things in the past, to run an event in like December, you got to be planning it in June. So I think realistically, if we fire off nationals, and I'd love to fire off nationals, hopefully in Atlanta like normal, it's going to be December. It's going to be, because by the time we get to normal, June or July, then Jasco can look at getting event space and holding an event.
Yeah, because they have to find a venue willing to also do it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. While there's definitely places that are gonna want money and it'll be like, I will take that booking now and with a deposit because it's income coming in, but and it's a lot. They don't know what's gonna happen. They could get to September and who knows where we're at. Like things, you don't know. Everything. I wake up every day right now. I'm just like, all right, where are we at? That's all I can do, man. I can't give you. I'm no crystal ball anymore. I gave up on the crystal ball theory.
Hey,
with this.
I remember we were to have full churches by Easter. It's going to go away like a miracle, right? Oh wait, I've heard that one before.
Anyway, do we have anything else for the show tonight?
Yeah, let's move on to our last question for the show tonight. I think this is going to be a fun one.
Okay.
What are some of your best memories of Universes in UFS? And we talked a lot about good memories here on the show. There are so many.
I
Yeah, I'm gonna steal Jesse's thunder a little bit and say my peak Manta Ramen experience was with Team Sober Enough to Fight after I took a incredibly tilting loss out of the Rochester CCG 2K in Vegas, and then we played Indians Team Sealed with a bunch of cans of Four Loko. And then after we wrapped that up, and I took that down with my friends Jack Hale and Devin Bernier on Team Sober Enough to Fight, who said, "Play Team Sealed with us. We'll be Team Sober Enough to Fight." We went and got ramen, and that was my peak Monte ramen experience.
and then you had to fly home.
Yeah, and then I took an Uber. I think actually like my first 2 Ubers of my life was going to ramen and then going from ramen to the airport to come home.
I will say actually my best memory is actually when I decided to come back to UFS. Like when everything kind of fell apart, I was kind of like hit and miss with UFS. I was like, yeah, it's still here. People are still playing, but I'm just like not. I'm trying everything else out. Like I did the Magic train for about a year and a half, I think, and then I think KOF came out, and I think it was the KOF the first KOF release. I showed up for FNM, and everybody was there. Like, wait a minute, the set actually is coming out. Like, and I think I played in that event, and I was hooked again because then I finally saw that Ruler Time was gonna have Raiden, and then Raiden was like my favorite KOF character that never was in the original sets, and I was so like bummed about it. And now he's like, he's back, and I'm like. Like, if you knew me for a year and a half, all I did was play Raiden.
Oh, it was Raiden every week. No matter how the meta went away from him, no matter how bad Raiden became.
Lucha. Yeah.
Jesse shows up with Raiden. Everyone's running play sets of Throw Hate. Raiden.
Yep. I knew how to play against every piece of Throw Hate in UFS by the Worlds that year. And that was the best. The best part is my first year. Like I didn't do well in big tournaments back in the day. I had some good runs, but I always fell apart. And then I come back, and I teased with Jeffrey Kahn and Matt Hughes, and we go to the finals of teams. And I'm just like, did I get better, or did the players just get? Like I was so confused, like what was going on. I'm like, I played against most of these people before. In FFG era, and I'm like, what? Am I there? Am I just hitting my stride finally? It was such a weird experience, but it's like that first I'm playing UFS, and I was enjoying it again. That was the one thing I just didn't like at the end of UFS. I was so bummed from FFG because I didn't get my promos made because I spent so much damn time designing those damn promos, and they're just like, yeah, that's not happening. Just like. Oh man, it's such a but that's it. That's really it. It was like I got to finally play characters I wanted to play from UFS. That's what really brought me back in, and I was so happy about it. Long term, been amazing.
Tim Keefe.
Yeah, for me, and I think this is probably going to be for a lot of people. Like even though, obviously when I play the game, it's really fun, and so the best memories are not often individual matches while at the tournaments, right? Like sitting in the hotels or the Genkan halls or whatever. Like the matches are all really good, but the favorite stuff's always the stuff that's in and around that, or like the events that are just kind of scuffed and everyone's just kind of enjoying it, despite the fact that we're in Guelph playing at this bar, and they're like, you know what, it was a good time.
I went 2-0 drunk in that event.
Yeah, and stuff like that, the evenings hanging out in the Holiday Inn, just playing board games with whoever was there. Everything in and around GenCon when there were majors there, just hanging out in Vegas, that sort of stuff. The scuffed teams event that didn't award cardboard up in Canada that one time, or then we even just watching Church and Garrett play at the diner.
I had a poutine during that.
Yeah, it's all stuff like that. And it's just like road trips to this. When I was in college, like I drove up to the store in like southern New York State that where they played this like 2v2 teams format where Hugo was extra broken. But like it was fun. Like it was nice to like while being isolated out in college, just come in. There's a place where like they're not like great players or anything. They're playing this silly format where I get to like play this wacky 12 card combo Kyoshiro, and it works because nobody can hit me because of the rules of their format. But it's all stuff like that, and like coming into Rochester for the first time and like having 10 trillion people at Sean's place, and it's all stuff.
That was that week. That was the first time we met Kid when Timothy shows up at the store, and we realize it's Tim, and we forget clearly that Tim stayed at Sean's, and like Sean had just moved in.
Yeah, I just bought the house that like 4 months before.
Yeah.
Tim, do you remember Pick Your Poison in Sean's living room?
Yes. Yeah. I remember at a later staying over Sean's. It was the first time they did a PTC like the day of a set release, and I was like on that couch, cracking KOF boxes, looking for Kunoichi no Mais that I won the event with.
So my best memories of Universes, kind of like Tim Keefe's, are things that are after hours. It's Universes after hours. We used to run the New York State circuit back when there were like 6 stores in New York. It was nice to adventure down the thruway in the middle of winter, not knowing if you're going to make it to the event or make it home. One memory that will always stick out to me is we were at Buka no Beppo at no, not Buka de Beppo rather, and we were at the Excalibur.
No Becca. Yeah.
We are at the Excalibur, and right next to the restaurant was the entrance to the Thunder Down Under, which is a kind of an Australian male tease show. And Andrew, Alexa, and I there's all these these women outside, and we just thought it would be funny because we'd had a couple drinks just to pull up our shirts and show them because they were going to see the shirtless men were going by, and they were strong and beautiful and very different from me, and we wanted to show off our thunder too. I'll never forget that. Back when we were like 18 years old, right? That's a fun memory.
That was that like Vegas 1 or something like that?
It was so long ago. I mean,
yeah,
Alexa was there, so it was a long time ago. But
that might have been the first Vegas I ever went to, I think. Yeah.
There was a time that Jesse and I drove to Vegas for the
Oh
2K, and we thought the car was going to break down because the engine came on in the mountains. I mean, just
driving out. We were coming into Utah out of the Rockies, and the light goes on, and we're like, "Uh-oh!" And we're just like, I'm on my phone, like trying to get an internet connection to find like an auto parts, and then we pull into this literally a manufactured village. That's what it looked like. They had an O'Reilly's auto port. But a guy comes in, he plugs in, and like, "You guys just coming out of the mountains?" I'm like, "Yep." And he's like, "Yeah, that happens all the time. Don't worry, just drive for a bit. You're fine." I'm like, okay.
Something about the altitude or something.
Yeah. It's the
temperature.
For me, it's the adventures.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there was one PTC we came back from downstate where the weather was so bad we had to stop in Syracuse because there was like 6 inches of snow on the road, and it was like, whose lane is it anyway? You'll just drive wherever you can.
There was we've had so many drive back from events and be like, all right, where are we going? Like I definitely have had the 12.5-hour drive home from Poughkeepsie. I've had the 12.5-hour drive home from Syracuse. Or was it Utica? Utica was that event.
For me, it's about the after hours adventures. I mean, that that's when you make friends. That's when I've made friends with Tim Keefe. I never thought all those years ago when I met this quiet, mild-mannered gentleman that he would ever come move and live in Rochester with us and talk with us about Universes every night. I met people like Andrew Lexa, people like Piglet. I mean, just so many good times, so many good people. And I'm excited because once the pandemic's over, once we have My Hero, we're going to meet a lot of new people and have a lot of new adventures. So I'm super hype.
We're going to be the old men, Sean. We're gonna be the old men and be like,
just the
like
boomers.
we
sweat.
learn from us.
Back in my day, we drove 16 hours to a PTC. Okay, Grandpa, we have PTCs in every city now.
Yeah. Yeah. If you think Legacy Power Hour is like annoying now, it's like, hey guys, look at this card Meteor.
Alrighty, that's it. We're done with our trip down memory lane now. Thank you again, everyone, for the questions. We'll do some quick housekeeping. We'll let you guys be done listening to the old man here for the night. My Hero Academia pre-orders are still up at rochesterccg.com. I'm hoping that we're going to have some news about a release very soon. Get your boxes, because remember, for every box you order, you're going to get 2 of those super sexy quirk packs. And that's, like I said, Tim says they're extra ultras. I say they're extra box toppers. They're extra win. I mean, that's what it is at the end of the day. Any final thoughts before we let everybody get going for the night, guys? All right, everyone's quiet. That's a first. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week for more of your questions and answers and any news that happens while we're away. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Good night.